I woke at 3 in the morning to pitch darkness and 19-degree cold. Someone had cut my power line. Just mine. Every neighbor's house glowed with light except my ranch. When I called the utility company, they told me I didn't own my property anymore. The HOA president had forged ownership documents and filed them with the county. I'm Jake Morrison. I survived 20 years breathing toxic smoke as a wildfire ranger, saving people's homes from flames. Then I bought 40 acres of Montana paradise, Crystal Lake, green mountains, everything I dreamed of. Within 60 days, the HOA president was destroying me, finding me into bankruptcy, killing my livestock with red tape, forging legal documents to steal my land. I had 72 hours before the bank foreclosed, and I lost everything. But here's the thing about wildfire rangers. We know how to fight fires, and we know how to start them. What happened next made national news and changed HOA law in 3 states. Comment below where you're watching from. I need to know how far this fight has reached. I'm Jake Morrison, 38 years old, former wildfire ranger. For 20 years, I breathed toxic smoke and watched friends die in flames, saving homes in California that weren't mine. Every season I told myself, just one more year, one more paycheck, one more step toward the dream. 40 acres in Montana. That was the dream. The day I signed the deed, my hands shook so badly I could barely hold the pen. The realtor smiled like she understood, but she didn't. Nobody could. This wasn't just property. This was oxygen after drowning for 2 decades. I drove up that dirt road for the first time as the owner, and my chest went tight. Rolling green hills stretched forever. A crystal lake reflected snow-capped peaks so perfectly it looked like 2 worlds touching. Wildflowers carpeted the meadows, purple, yellow, white. The air smelled like pine and coming rain. My golden retriever, Copper, jumped out before I even stopped the truck. He splashed into that lake like he'd been waiting his whole life for this moment. Maybe we both had been. I hammered the first fence post into soil that felt sacred. Each swing of the sledge was a promise. This is mine. This is real. This is permanent. My neighbor Tom wandered over that evening. Good guy. Weathered face. Calloused hands. Real rancher. We shook hands, and he helped me unload lumber for the barn. Beautiful property, he said. Then his smile faded. You know about the HOA, right? I laughed. Actually laughed. How bad can a rural HOA be? Tom went quiet. Wouldn't look at me. Just stared at the mountains like they held answers he couldn't say out loud. Tom, how bad? He shook his head. Just read the rules. All of them. That night I grilled steaks on my porch. Watched elk graze near the tree line. Stars so thick you could grab handfuls. The meat tasted like victory. Like freedom. Like everything I'd ever wanted. Then headlights crawled up my road. Silver Mercedes. Completely wrong for ranch country. It moved slow. Deliberate. Predatory. A woman emerged. Mid-50s. Designer clothes that probably cost more than my truck. Hair perfect. Makeup perfect. Smile perfect and completely empty. I'm Margaret Brennan, HOA president. She extended her hand like she was doing me a favor. Welcome to Ridgeview Valley. She handed me a binder. 3 inches thick. The weight felt wrong in my hands. The community rules, she said. I'm sure you'll find everything very reasonable. I flipped through pages. Grass height regulations. Fence color restrictions. Livestock limitations. Building permits. Noise ordinances. Pages and pages of microscopic text. I have grandfathered rights, I said. My property predates the HOA by 30 years. Her smile didn't move, but her eyes changed. Went cold. Flat. Like a snake's. We'll see about that, Mr. Morrison. She walked back to her Mercedes. Heels clicking on stone. She paused at her car door. Lovely property. Be a shame if anything complicated that. She drove away slow. I stood there holding that binder like a grenade. Copper growled. First time in his life. He stared down the road where her taillights disappeared, and every hair on his spine stood up. I looked at the binder. Then at my ranch. My paradise. What the hell had I just walked into? 2 weeks of silence. I almost convinced myself Tom was overreacting. That Margaret was just an uptight neighbor. That everything would be fine. I was hammering fence posts when the Mercedes returned. But this time Margaret brought friends. 3 other HOA board members climbed out. They wore business casual like they were auditing a corporation, not visiting a cattle ranch. They fanned out across my property with cameras and clipboards, photographing everything. My barn, my cattle, my solar panels. The fence I was literally building. Margaret's heels sank into mud, but she kept walking. Documenting. Hunting. Excuse me, I called out. What are you doing? She didn't answer. Just kept taking pictures. I walked over. Close enough to see her screen. She was photographing my fence from 6 different angles. Your fence violates code 7.3.2, she finally said. No greeting. No warmth. Wrong shade of brown. I laughed. Couldn't help it. It's wood. Natural cedar. This is the color it comes. We require Sherwin-Williams Mountain Trail number 3847. Approved stain only. She handed me a citation. Official letterhead. My name typed perfectly. You have 14 days to comply. I looked at the paper. At the bottom, fine for non-compliance, $200 per day. My stomach dropped. $200 per day? After the 14-day grace period. Yes. I did the math. 800 feet of fence. Special stain. Professional application to meet code standards. $8,000 minimum. My military pension was $3,200 a month. The mortgage was $1,800. That left $1,400 for everything else. Food. Utilities. Truck payment. Gas. Veterinary care. I didn't have $8,000. This is insane, I said. The fence is functional and safe. The rules are clear, Mr. Morrison. We all follow them. She smiled. For community harmony. They left. All 4 of them. Drove away in their clean cars on my dirt road. That night, I researched the HOA. Found the incorporation documents. Margaret's husband owned Whitmore Property Development. They bought all the surrounding land 5 years ago. Created the HOA. Wrote the rules. My 40 acres was the only property they didn't control. The only holdout in their perfect development plan. Now I understood. This wasn't about fence colors. This was about elimination. Morning brought another citation zip-tied to my gate. Unauthorized livestock. Code 9.2.7. Cattle require special permits and annual inspections. Fine, $500 per animal. I had 6 cattle. $3,000. The rule was dated 3 weeks ago, right after I moved in, and my grandfather clause was suddenly under review pending board evaluation. I called a lawyer. Consultation was $500 I didn't have. He was honest at least. Fighting HOAs is expensive. They have deeper pockets than you. Corporate backing. Most people just sell and move. I walked to the lake. Copper beside me. The water was glass smooth. Mountains reflected perfectly. This was supposed to be peace. Freedom. The reward for 20 years of hell. I'd inhaled smoke for 2 decades saving other people's homes. I wasn't losing mine without a fight. But then I saw it. Margaret's Mercedes. Parked on the ridge above my property. Just sitting there. I grabbed binoculars. She was inside. Phone to her ear. Camera pointed at my ranch. She was watching. Documenting. Building a case. This wasn't over. This was just beginning. The citations multiplied like cancer cells. Wrong mailbox color. Code violation. Firewood pile, too visible from the road. Code violation. Clothesline visible from neighboring property. Code violation. Each one carried fines. Each one had deadlines. Each one drained money I didn't have. I stopped sleeping. Every sound made me jump. Every car engine. Every door closing. Was it Margaret? Was it another citation? Another impossible demand? I started working overnight construction 3 towns over. 70-hour weeks. My hands cracked and bled from cement and cold. I'd come home at dawn, feed the cattle, collapse for 3 hours, then start again. Kappa's ribs started showing. I was skipping meals to pay fines. The ranch I'd dreamed about for 20 years became a prison. Tom stopped by one morning. Brought groceries without asking. Set them on my porch like he was ashamed. She did this to the Hendersons, he said quietly. The Pratts. The Johnsons. Drove every one of them out. They couldn't afford to fight. Why didn't anyone stop her? Tom looked at the mountains. Because she makes examples. Push back and it gets worse. Way worse. He turned to me. His eyes were haunted. I pay every fine. Keep my head down. Repainted my barn 3 times to get the right shade. I'm sorry, Jake. I'm sorry. He left before I could respond. I understood. Fear is a cage. Margaret knew exactly how to build them. One morning, everything changed. I was bottle feeding a calf. The mother had rejected him. Without help, he'd die in 48 hours. He was 3 days old and shivering despite the blanket I'd wrapped him in. Margaret's Mercedes appeared like a bad dream. She climbed out, stared at the calf, at the makeshift shelter I'd built. Livestock structures require permits filed 30 days in advance. That shelter is illegal. The calf nuzzled against my chest. Hungry, trusting, helpless. He's 3 days old, I said. His mother won't feed him. He'll freeze without shelter. Then you should have filed the proper paperwork. Her voice was ice. You have 14 days to remove the structure. After that, we fine you $300 per day and contact animal control to remove the animal. She said animal like it was trash. Rage flooded through me. Pure, burning, the kind that makes you stupid and dangerous. I stepped forward. Margaret didn't flinch, didn't blink. Threatening an HOA official is a serious offense, Mr. Morrison. I can have the sheriff here in 3 minutes. Would you like me to make that call? My fists were clenched. My vision tunneled. 20 years fighting fires, and I wanted to burn everything down. But she was right. One wrong move, and I'd lose everything. I stepped back. 14 days, she said. Then she left. I sat in the dirt holding that calf. He made soft sounds against my shirt. I built the best shelter I could without permits. Fed him every 4 hours. Prayed to a God I wasn't sure I believed in anymore. The calf died on day 6. Just stopped breathing in my arms. I buried him under stars. Copper whimpered and dug at the dirt like he could bring him back. I stood over that small grave and felt something inside me die too. Or maybe it didn't die. Maybe it just transformed into something darker. Something Margaret should have feared. I was running on fumes and rage. 3 hours of sleep per night. Maximum. Usually less. The bags under my eyes were permanent now. My hands shook when I held coffee. I'd lost 15 pounds I didn't have to lose. The bank called. Mortgage payment was overdue. Late fees accruing daily. I checked my account. $17.34. Every penny had gone to HOA fines. Every cent I'd scraped together from double shifts and skipped meals, gone. Paying for fence paint I didn't need. Permits for structures that didn't require them. Violations that shouldn't exist. I sat on my porch at dawn with coffee that tasted like defeat. This was losing. This was what losing felt like. Margaret knew it too. Her Mercedes made daily passes now. Slow. Deliberate. She'd crawl past my property at 10 miles per hour. Sometimes she'd stop. Just sit there. Watching. Making sure I saw her watching. Psychological warfare. And it was working. Then came the final blow. Certified letter. I signed for it with shaking hands. Notice of eminent domain review. The HOA was petitioning the county, claiming my ranch was improperly maintained and negatively impacted property values and community standards. They wanted to force a sale, below market value, to Whitmore Property Development, Margaret's husband's company. The letter crumpled in my fist. 20 years. 20 years I'd breathed toxic smoke. Watched friends die choking on ash. Saved homes for strangers while living in a trailer. For what? For this? To be driven off my own land by a woman in designer shoes? I grabbed my truck keys. I was going to the HOA office. I was going to say things. Do things. Things I couldn't take back. I made it halfway there when the sky opened. Thunder like artillery fire. Rain so thick I couldn't see the hood of my truck. I pulled over near the lake. Couldn't drive blind. Lightning split the sky. Struck so close my hair stood on end. The truck rocked. Thunder simultaneous. Deafening. Through the downpour, I could see the HOA office building on the hill. Lights blazing. Margaret's Mercedes in the parking lot. She was in there. Probably drafting more citations. More fines. More ways to destroy me. Another lightning strike. Closer. The air smelled like ozone and violence. The rage in my chest matched the storm. Mirrored it. Became it. I'd never been religious. Not really. Spent too many years watching good people die while bad people prospered. But sitting in that truck, watching lightning tear the sky apart, I prayed. First time in years. If there's any justice in this world, I whispered. Any justice at all. Any God worth believing in. Thunder drowned my words. The storm intensified. Rain hammered the truck roof like bullets. Wind screamed. Lightning struck again and again. The whole valley lit up white. I watched the HOA office through sheets of rain. Watched and waited. Prayed and raged. And then, everything changed. The lightning strike hit like divine fury. One moment the HOA office glowed on that hill. The next, a flash so bright I was blinded. Thunder and impact simultaneous. The entire building exploded in sparks. I sat frozen. Watching as every window shattered. Watching as flames erupted despite the rain. watching as Margaret's kingdom burned. The building burned like hell had opened a door. Orange flames reflected off the lake, off the rain, off my windshield. The storm seemed to feed the fire instead of drowning it. Wind whipped the flames higher. Lightning struck again, close enough to feel, and the roof collapsed inward. I should move, should help. 20 years as a wildfire ranger. Thousands of hours of training. But I sat there, watching, unable to look away. My radio crackled. Emergency services dispatch. All units, structure fire, 4757, Ridgeview Lane. Ridgeview HOA Community Center. Multiple lightning strikes reported. All available units respond. The HOA Community Center. Margaret's headquarters. Her office. Her files. Her records. Burning. My training screamed at me to move. To help. To do something. But I didn't move. I watched it burn. Fire trucks arrived. Too late. The building was already gone. Just smoking rubble and twisted metal. Firefighters sprayed water, but there was nothing left to save. Margaret's Mercedes sat untouched in the parking lot. Not a scratch, but her empire was ash. I drove home slowly, carefully, like I was carrying something fragile. Copper greeted me at the door. I collapsed onto the couch and slept 12 hours straight. First real sleep in months. No dreams. Just darkness. Peace. When I woke, the sun was brilliant. The valley looked scrubbed clean. Every leaf on every tree sparkled. The mountains stood sharp against blue sky. I walked outside. The air smelled different. Lighter. Like something heavy had been lifted. My radio was still on. Morning news. Investigators are calling last night's fire at the Ridgeview HOA office an act of God. The building was struck by lightning multiple times during the storm. The structure is a complete loss. All records destroyed. The HOA president, Margaret Brennan, was not present at the time. No injuries reported. All records destroyed. Every citation. Every fine. Every violation. Every document they'd used against me. Gone. I started laughing. Couldn't help it. Couldn't stop. Tears streamed down my face. Copper jumped around me, barking, confused by my joy. The phone rang. Tom. Jake. His voice was shaking. Did you hear? Did you see it? I saw it. It's all gone. Everything. Every file. Every record. His voice broke. We're free. He hung up. Probably crying. Probably didn't want me to hear. I walked to the lake. Stood where I'd buried the calf. The grave was barely visible now. Grass growing back already. The water was perfect. Mirror smooth. Mountains reflected like a painting. For the first time since I'd signed that deed, I felt what I was supposed to feel. Peace. Freedom. Home. But standing there, watching the water, something nagged at me. Margaret's car had been in that parking lot. Untouched. Perfect. But she hadn't been in the building. She was somewhere else during the storm. Somewhere safe. And women like Margaret didn't give up. They regrouped. They adapted. They came back harder. I looked at Copper. He was staring at the ridge. At the burned remains of the HOA office visible in the distance. His ears were forward. Alert. You feel it too, boy. He whined. Soft. Worried. The battle was over. But I didn't think the war was. Not even close. 3 weeks of silence. No Mercedes. No citations. No Margaret. The valley breathed again. Like a forest after a fire. Raw. Damaged. But alive. Neighbors emerged. Slowly at first. Then with growing confidence. Tom repainted his barn. Bright red. Against every rule Margaret had written. He worked in broad daylight. Smiling. Actually smiling. The Millers fixed their fence the way they'd always wanted. The Johnsons planted a garden right by the road. The Hendersons' old property, empty for 3 years, had a for sale sign with fresh flowers around it. Kids played outside. Laughter carried across the lake. I repaired everything Margaret had tried to destroy. Built a proper shelter for the cattle. Organized the firewood. Fixed the barn roof. The ranch started feeling like what it was supposed to be. Home. I even committed to the cattle. Really committed. Named them. Built better pastures. They weren't just livestock anymore. They were mine. Copper filled out again. His ribs disappeared under healthy weight. We both ate regular meals. Slept through the night. I was on the barn roof replacing shingles when Tom drove up. Different truck. Brand new. He climbed out looking 10 years younger. Contractors are coming Monday, he called up. Finally building that workshop I've wanted for 8 years. No permits. I grinned. Records are gone. He grinned back. Can't enforce rules that don't exist anymore. That night I grilled steaks. Invited Tom. We drank beer and watched stars appear. Think she'll come back? Tom asked. The question hung there. Heavy. Real. I didn't answer. We both knew the truth. Women like Margaret don't quit. They regroup. Sure enough, 2 days later, the Mercedes returned. I was feeding the cattle when I heard the engine. That distinctive purr. My stomach nodded. She didn't come to my property. Just parked at the valley entrance. Driver's door opened. Margaret stepped out. But she looked different. Older. Tired. Her makeup wasn't perfect. Her clothes were wrinkled. She stood there for 5 minutes. Just looking at the valley. At the homes. At my ranch in the distance. Then she got back in her car and left. Tom called immediately. She's back. I know. What do you think she's doing? I grabbed binoculars. Watched her Mercedes disappear down the mountain road. Planning, I said. That night the temperature dropped. Unseasonable cold. November in Montana could be brutal, but this felt wrong. Early. Aggressive. My breath fogged in the cabin. Copper wouldn't settle. Kept pacing. Growling at nothing. At shadows. Animals know things humans miss. They sense predators before they see them. I stood at the window. Looked out at the dark valley. Lights in distant homes. Peaceful. Quiet. But underneath that peace was something else. Tension. Anticipation. The feeling before a storm. Margaret wasn't done. She'd never be done. The fire had destroyed her records, but not her will. Not her resources. Not her need to control. She'd regroup. Adapt. Find a new angle. And next time she'd be angrier. More dangerous. I thought about the calf I'd buried. The nights without sleep. The moment I'd almost driven to her office with rage in my chest. This wasn't over. The piece was borrowed. And payment was coming due. Copper growled again. Low. Continuous. I put my hand on his head. I know, boy. I know. Margaret's revenge was surgical. Precise. Calculated. She couldn't use citations anymore. No records existed. Couldn't prove violations. No documentation survived the fire. So she went nuclear. The newspaper article appeared on a Tuesday morning. Front page. Local section. Local ranch endangering community. Concerns raised about unsanitary conditions. Anonymous complaints. Concerned citizens reporting runoff contaminating the lake. Aggressive animals threatening children. Health hazards. All lies. Complete fabrication. But printed in black and white like truth. The health inspector arrived the next day. Young guy. Apologetic. He walked my property for 3 hours. Tested water. Checked fences. Inspected the cattle. Everything's clean, he said finally. Better than most operations I see. Someone's harassing you. Can you put that in writing? Already did. Reports filed. But he looked uncomfortable. People read newspapers, not inspection reports. He left. The damage was done. Then the real attack began. County Environmental Board received formal complaints. Multiple reports about runoff. Contamination. Environmental damage. All anonymous. All lies. But investigations cost money. Legal responses cost money. Testing. Documentation. Lawyers. Margaret knew exactly what she was doing. Bleeding me dry a different way. I hired a lawyer. Young guy. Fresh out of school. Worked on payment plans because that's all I could afford. This is textbook harassment, he said. But proving it in court takes time. Money. Discovery. Depositions. We're looking at 18 months minimum. I didn't have 18 months. I had maybe 6 weeks before bankruptcy. Then it got personal. I was in town buying feed. Hardware store. Stood in line behind an older couple. Margaret's voice carried from the next aisle. Loud. Intentional. That ranch is a lawsuit waiting to happen. Dangerous property. Someone should alert insurance companies before tragedy strikes. The couple in front of me exchanged glances. Stepped away slightly. Like I was contagious. My homeowner's insurance canceled 2 weeks later. High-risk property. Multiple complaints filed. We can no longer provide coverage. I called 6 other companies. Same answer. Word had spread. Margaret had spread it. The bank called within days. Insurance is required per your mortgage agreement. Without coverage, we can accelerate repayment. Require immediate payment in full. $70,000. I had $800 in my account. I sat in my truck outside the bank. Hands on the steering wheel. Staring at nothing. My phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Morrison? This is Whitmore Property Development. We'd like to make an offer on your ranch. Cash. Quick close. You'd walk away clean. Margaret's husband's company. I hung up. They called back an hour later. Same offer. I hung up again. They called every hour for 3 days straight. Different numbers, different voices. Same company, same message. Sell. Walk away. Give up. Each call was a threat wrapped in professionalism. A reminder that they could do this forever. That they had resources I didn't. On day 4, the calls changed. Mr. Morrison, we're prepared to offer below market value. This property has significant issues. Documented complaints. No insurance. Legal liabilities. You should consider this carefully. Translation, we've destroyed your property's value. Now we'll take it for nothing. I stopped answering. Let voicemail fill up. Disconnected. Tom brought groceries again. Set them on my porch without speaking. I saw fear in his eyes. Margaret was making an example, showing the whole valley what happened when you fought back. Step out of line. This happens. That night I stood at the lake. Water black as oil. Stars reflected like broken glass. I could leave. Take whatever deal they offered. Start over somewhere else. Maybe somewhere without HOAs. Without Margaret's. The water lapped at my boots. Cold. Dark. Inviting in a way that scared me. And I understood why families ran. Why they abandoned their homes. It wasn't losing the fight. It was losing yourself in it. I stopped answering the phone. Stopped checking mail. Stopped pretending I had control. Tom brought groceries every few days. Wouldn't take money. We're in this together, he'd say. But I saw the fear in his eyes. The way he'd glance at the ridge. At Margaret's surveillance. She was watching all of us. The message was clear. This is what happens when you resist. I started drinking. Not much. Just enough to sleep. Whiskey straight from the bottle while sitting on the porch. Copper would watch me with worried eyes. I was failing him. Failing the ranch. Failing everything. The mountains looked different now. Less like freedom. More like walls of a prison I'd built myself. 3 in the morning became my enemy. I'd wake in cold sweat. Heart racing. Mind spinning through impossible math. Money I didn't have. Debts I couldn't pay. Time I'd run out of. I walked to the lake at midnight one Thursday. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't think. Couldn't breathe in that cabin anymore. The water was black. Stars reflected like holes punched through to somewhere better. Somewhere easier. I could leave. Just walk away. Take whatever buyout they offered. Start over. Maybe somewhere without HOAs. Without people like Margaret. The water lapped at my boots. Cold. Patient. Waiting. I understood now. Why the Hendersons left. The Pratts. The Johnsons. All the families Margaret had destroyed. It wasn't losing the fight that broke you. It was losing yourself in it. I stood there. Water touching my boots. 1 more step, and I'd be waiting. 2 more steps, and I'd be swimming. 3 more steps, and... Copper barked. Sharp. Urgent. I turned. He was on the shore. Staring at me. Whining. I'm okay, boy. But I wasn't. We both knew it. I was about to turn back when I saw them. Lights on the ridge. The old HOA office site. Construction equipment. Floodlights. Workers moving in the darkness. They were rebuilding. Even after the fire. Even after God himself struck it down. Even after everything. They were rebuilding. Something snapped inside me. Not rage this time. Something colder. Clearer. Clarity. Margaret would never stop. This wasn't about rules. This wasn't about property values or community standards. This was about power. Control. Dominance. And people like her didn't surrender. They had to be beaten. Completely. Publicly. Permanently. No half measures. No compromises. No mercy. I pulled out my phone. Hands steady for the first time in weeks. Called my old fire chief in California. He answered on the 3rd ring. Jake? It's 3 in the morning. You okay? I need a favor. An information on building code violations. Fire suppression. Emergency exits. Electrical standards. Silence. Then, what are you planning? Survival. He was quiet for a long moment. Send me the address. I'll have a full report by morning. Thanks, Chief. Jake? Be careful. People who play with fire. I know how to fight fires, I said. Spent 20 years learning. I hung up. Looked at Copper. He'd stopped whining. Was watching me with different eyes. Alert. Ready. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. Not from joy. From purpose. The war wasn't over. I'd been playing defense. Reacting. Surviving. Time to attack. Margaret wanted to rebuild her empire? Fine. Let her build. I'd burn it down again. Legally this time. Permanently. Game on. My fire chief came through. Sent a 40-page report by sunrise. Building permits for the new HOA office. Construction plans. Electrical diagrams. Fire suppression layouts. I studied them like battle plans. Because that's what they were. Margaret's husband had rushed the permits, cut corners, paid inspectors to look the other way. Fire suppression systems didn't meet code. Emergency exits blocked by architectural design. Electrical work substandard. Structural supports inadequate for mountain weather. She was so eager to rebuild her empire she got sloppy. I documented everything. Photographs with timestamps. Measurements. Code violations highlighted in red. But I needed more than building violations. I needed her entire operation exposed. Tom connected me with the Hendersons. The family Margaret drove out 3 years ago. They were in Idaho now, rebuilding their lives. Mrs. Henderson answered my video call with shaking hands. She forged board votes, she said. Her voice cracked. Created fake meeting minutes. Made up violations that didn't exist. We have emails proving it. Can you send them? I saved everything. Every email. Every document. Every thread. Tears ran down her face. Nobody would listen. Nobody cared. I'm listening now. The files arrived within an hour. Dozens of PDFs. Emails showing Margaret creating false violations. Forging signatures. Fabricating complaints. I contacted the Pratts. The Johnsons. Every family Margaret destroyed. They all had pieces. Evidence they'd kept out of anger or hope or helplessness. Together, it was a mountain of criminal activity. Forgery. Embezzlement. Fraud. The HOA fees Margaret collected? Half went to personal accounts. Her husband's company. Her lifestyle. But evidence meant nothing without leverage. Without pressure. Without someone powerful enough to care. Tom mentioned it casually. Margaret's son is running for county commissioner. Elections in 6 weeks. All over the news. Perfect. I started making calls. Local news stations. State HOA oversight boards. Better Business Bureau. Attorney General's office. Anonymous tips to investigative reporters. Detailed. Documented. Impossible to ignore. I was planting seeds everywhere. Waiting for one to grow. One morning, I woke to find my gate spray painted. Red letters, 3 feet high. Sell or else. Copper barked frantically. Someone had been on my property. At night. While I slept. I checked security cameras. All 4 were disabled. Professionally. Cleanly. No footage. No evidence. No proof. Just a threat. Margaret was escalating. Getting desperate. Showing her hand. Good. Desperate people make mistakes. I called the sheriff. Filed a report. Took photos. Made it official. Then I called a journalist who'd responded to one of my tips. Rachel Chun. Investigative reporter for the regional paper. I'm interested in your story, she said. But I need proof. Documentation. On-record interviews. I have everything. Emails. Financial records. Building violations. Witness statements from 6 families. Silence. Then, send it all. If this checks out, I'll run it front page. I sent everything. Every file. Every photo. Every email. 2 days later, her article dropped. HOA corruption. One woman's empire of intimidation. Front page. Regional paper. 3,000 words. Names named. Evidence cited. Photographs included. The article was devastating. Detailed Margaret's fraud. Her forgeries. Her embezzlement. The families she destroyed. Within hours it was everywhere. Shared thousands of times. Picked up by state media. National outlets. Margaret's son's campaign imploded. Press conference canceled. Donation refunds demanded. County prosecutors announced an investigation. News vans arrived at the valley entrance. Everything I hoped for. Everything I needed. But that night my power went out. Just mine. And I knew Margaret's real revenge was just beginning. The power died at 3 in the morning. Complete darkness. Silent cold. I woke to Kappa's barking. Grabbed my flashlight. Checked the breaker panel. Nothing tripped. Everything looked normal. I walked outside. Every neighbor's house glowed with light. Warm windows. Electric heat. Just my ranch was dark. I followed the power line. Found where it connected to my property. The line was cut. Cleanly. Professionally. Not storm damage. Sabotage. No power meant no water pump. No refrigeration. No heat. November in Montana. Temperatures dropping to 19 degrees at night. Without heat, the pipes would freeze. Burst. Destroy the house. I called the utility company at dawn. Waited on hold for 40 minutes. Your service was disconnected for non-payment, the operator said. I haven't missed a payment. Ever. Our records show a disconnection request from the property owner. I am the property owner. According to our files, The property is owned by Ridgeview HOA Management LLC. They requested disconnection 3 days ago. My blood went cold. Margaret had forged ownership documents, filed them with the county, with the utility company, legally claimed my property. That's fraud. Identity theft. I have the deed. You'll need to resolve that with the county recorder's office, sir. We can't restore service until ownership is confirmed. I called my lawyer. He was panicking. This is criminal. Property fraud. Identity theft. Forgery. But fixing it takes time. Court filings. Hearings. Proof of ownership. How long? 2 weeks minimum. Maybe a month. I didn't have a month. I had maybe 48 hours before pipes froze and the house was destroyed. Tom showed up at noon. Brought a generator. Industrial size. Enough to run basics. It's loud, he said, and you'll burn through 50 gallons of gas a week. But it'll keep you alive. The generator roared to life. Loud enough to hear 3 properties over. Expensive to run. Another drain on money I didn't have. But I had heat. Had light. Had survival. The journalist who wrote the article called back. I'm getting death threats, Rachel said. Anonymous calls. My editor wants me to back off. Don't. Please. I won't. But I need more. Something bigger. Something undeniable. 2 days later, her follow-up article dropped. HOA Corruption Part 2. Fraud, forgery, and the families left behind. Even more detailed. Financial records proving embezzlement. Forged documents. Witness testimony. It went viral. Shared tens of thousands of times. National news picked it up. Margaret's son withdrew from the race. Press statement blaming false accusations and political enemies. County prosecutors expanded their investigation. But that night, the power went out across the entire valley. Not just me. Everyone. 46 homes. Complete blackout. Margaret had gone too far. Made a mistake. A fatal one. She meant to show power. To punish everyone for supporting me. Instead, she created an army. Families with young children freezing. Elderly neighbors at risk. Medical equipment failing. Tom's wife was diabetic. Her insulin needed refrigeration. Without power, it would spoil. Within 2 hours, every neighbor was outside. Furious. Unified. Done. Years of fear evaporated in shared outrage. We gathered at Tom's barn. Generators running. 50 people crammed inside. She's gone too far, someone shouted. Others agreed. We call everyone. County officials. State representatives. News media. We flood their phones. For the first time, the valley fought back together. And Margaret had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Margaret's miscalculation was beautiful. Perfect. Fatal. Cutting power to the entire valley in November wasn't strategy. It was desperation. And desperation makes you stupid. She wanted to show power. Dominance. Control. Instead, she unified 46 families against her. We gathered in Tom's barn. Generators humming. People I'd never met knew my name. You're Jake. The guy fighting Margaret. You're the reason we're finally doing something. But this wasn't about me anymore. This was bigger. A young mother stood up. Tears streaming. She fined us $3,000 for a trampoline. Our kids couldn't play outside all summer. I thought we were alone. You weren't, someone else said. She did the same to us. Stories poured out. Years of suppressed rage finding voice. An elderly man forced to repaint his house 3 times. Never the right shade. Fined until he was bankrupt. A single mom evicted over a garden gnome. Lost her home. Her savings. Everything. A family bankrupted over a fence dispute. Marriage ended. Kids traumatized. Each story made me angrier. Made everyone angrier. We weren't victims. We were survivors. And there were dozens of us. Someone took charge. Organized. We call everyone. County officials. State representatives. Consumer protection. We overwhelmed them. Phones came out. 50 people making calls simultaneously. Within an hour, every county official's voicemail was full. By evening, emergency meetings were being scheduled. Local news arrived. Interviewed families. Filmed the darkened valley. The story was perfect. Sympathetic victims. Corrupt villain. Clear injustice. By 10 p.m., the utility company caved under legal pressure. Power was restored. Emergency court order forced reconnection. County prosecutors announced expanded investigations. Margaret's husband's company was suspended from county contracts. Pending fraud review. Everything I'd hoped for. And more. But standing in Tom's barn, watching the celebration, I felt nothing. Not joy. Not relief. Just exhaustion. The fight had consumed me, defined me, become me. Now what? Tom found me outside, brought coffee. We stood in silence watching the valley lights come back on, one house at a time, like stars appearing. Was it worth it? He asked finally. I thought about the calf I'd buried, the nights I'd stood at the lake's edge, the moment I'd almost become something dark, something I couldn't take back. Yeah, I said. It was because this wasn't really about the ranch, or the money, or even Margaret. It was about refusing to break, refusing to let bullies win, refusing to run. Where's Margaret? I asked. Tom shook his head. Her car hasn't been seen in 3 days. House is dark. Nobody knows. That should have felt like victory, but it felt wrong. People like Margaret don't just disappear, don't surrender quietly. They plan, they scheme, they strike when you're not looking. I walked back to my ranch. Copper beside me. The generator was still running. Loud. Expensive. But the lights were on. The house was warm. I checked the property. Locked every gate. Secured every entrance. Then I sat on the porch with my phone. Waited. For what? I didn't know. But survival instincts honed over 20 years fighting fires told me something was coming. One last move. One final attack. I just had to survive it. Then maybe this would finally be over. The sheriffs arrived at Margaret's house at dawn. I watched from my porch. Binoculars steady. Coffee going cold in my hand. 3 patrol cars. Unmarked detective vehicles. News helicopters circling overhead. Arrest warrants. Multiple charges. Fraud. Embezzlement. Forgery. Criminal harassment. Identity theft. Margaret emerged in handcuffs. Designer clothes wrinkled. Hair undone. Makeup smeared. For one moment, our eyes met across the distance. A quarter-mile of valley between us. She looked small, broken, human. Almost made me feel sorry for her. Almost. Her husband was arrested too. Handcuffs. Perp walk. Cameras recording everything. Their assets were frozen. Bank accounts. Properties. Vehicles. Everything seized pending investigation. The HOA was dissolved by emergency county order. All fees refunded. All citations voided. All rules eliminated. The victory was total. Complete. Everything I'd wanted. But standing there in morning light, I felt empty. The fight had consumed 18 months of my life. Every thought, every moment, every breath. I'd defined myself by opposition, by resistance, by survival. Now what? Tom appeared, brought fresh coffee without asking. We stood side by side, silent, watching the valley wake up. The sun painted the mountains gold. The lake reflected perfect sky. Elk grazed near the tree line. This was what I'd fought for. Was it worth it? Tom asked. I thought about everything. The calf I'd buried. The nights I'd gone hungry. The moment I'd stood in that lake ready to give up. The families who'd suffered. The community that had finally unified. The precedent we'd set. Yeah, I said. It was. Because this wasn't really about fence colors or citations. It wasn't even about Margaret. It was about refusing to be broken. Refusing to let bullies win. Refusing to abandon what's yours. Over the following weeks, the valley healed. Real laughter returned. Kids played freely. Tom built his workshop. The Millers planted flowers. I finished the barn. Planted a garden where the HOA office had burned. Wildflowers and native grasses. Let it grow wild and free. Copper was getting old. Gray around his muzzle. But happy. We walked to the lake every sunset. Sometimes cars would slow on the ridge. People looking at that ranch where the guy fought the HOA. The story had spread. Beyond the valley. Beyond Montana. National news. Viral videos. Podcasts. It became bigger than me. Became a symbol. Standing up works. Fighting back works. You can win. I started getting calls. Emails. Messages from strangers. I'm dealing with an HOA nightmare. Can you help? They're trying to force me out. What do I do? I found your story. It gave me hope. I'd answer when I could. Share what I'd learned. Connect people with lawyers. With journalists. With each other. One evening I sat on my porch. Fire crackling in the fireplace inside. Stars appearing overhead. My phone rang. Unknown number. Woman's voice. Shaking. Desperate. My name is Sarah. I'm in Oregon. The HOA is destroying my family. I found your story. Please. Can you help? I looked at the mountains. At the lake. At the ranch I'd nearly lost. Yeah, I said. I can help. Because I'd learned something fighting Margaret. Something important. Bullies don't stop until someone stops them. And sometimes you're the someone. The fight changed me. Shaped me. Made me someone who doesn't run. If this story moved you, hit that like button and comment below. Tell me where you're watching from and if you've ever faced something like this. Your story matters. Your voice matters. And together, we're stronger than any HOA could ever be.